Welcome to Behind the Transaction from RGCF. In this episode, we'll be looking at fundraising and a private investment round completed by Medical Research Network Limited. Joining me in the studio is Nick Johnson, CF partner, and on the line from the Caribbean is Graham Wylie, founder and chief executive of MRN Limited. Gentlemen, hello.
Hello.
Hi. Graham, starting with you, please can you give us an overview of MRN and the markets that you operate in?
Certainly. So the Medical Research Network is a clinical trial support organisation. We are an organisation that runs clinical trials in patients' homes and is part of what they call the decentralised clinical trial sector.
So we're obviously here to talk about a fundraise that RGCF worked with you on. So tell us about the purpose of that fundraise, what were you looking to achieve from it, and how did you first approach it?
Well, the purpose of the fundraise was to provide some external financing to our 5-year strategy. That strategy was developed over the course of about a year with the various finance advisors and also with the board of the organisation. And it provides us with an ability to increase our geographical footprint, an ability to increase the experience and capabilities of the staff in the organisation, and to add some new capabilities and services to the overall MRN portfolio.
Okay, Nick, turning to you, how did you work with Graham and his team to get the optimum outcome for MRN?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we had to get right was the timing of the fundraise. So as Graham said, we'd been working on the 5-year plan for some time, and we were about to press the button on the fundraise in early 2020 when obviously, as we all know, COVID hit. So things were put on hold as we assessed what impact that might have on the business. But it became apparent pretty quickly that the very positive trends in the decentralised trial space that we'd already started seeing were just being accelerated by COVID. So MRN was in an exceptionally good place to support its customers and its sector. So we agreed that it was right time to press the button, and we did that in about May 2020. And in terms of the key building blocks for the process, so there were 3 key building blocks. The first one was really making sure we understood in some detail what Graham and his fellow shareholders were trying to achieve from the fundraise. So of course that was about how much, what for, and on what time scale. But it was more than that. It was about sort of what was important to him and them in terms of things like equity dilution, approach to debt and gearing risk, and also continued control of the business. So that was the first thing. Second thing was then planning and preparation. So once we determined what we were trying to achieve, it was then about, well, how best do we make this happen? Who are the right funders to talk to across the whole range from conventional debt funds and equity providers? What is the story we're telling them? Articulating the business and the sector. It's not straightforward, it's a complex business. And also building a complex financial model which enabled us to run all sorts of scenarios and sensitivities to assess different funding levels and different funding solutions. And the third element was running a very efficient and effective process which explored that full range of options, enabled us to determine the optimum solution. And then once we determined that optimum solution was actually getting the money secured as quickly as possible so that Graham and his colleagues could put it to work as soon as possible.
Question for both of you here, just starting with you, Graham. So the fundraise included both a private investment round and also capital funding from Shawbrook Bank. So a few months down the line, how did you feel working with Shawbrook?
Well, it's been very straightforward so far. Shawbrook have been a long-term partner of ours, and I think are excellent providers of the services that we need. So it's been very straightforward.
So from your point of view, Nick, is it always good to work with a funder that's something that a company has already worked with, or would you sort of look at others in the market based on your relationships? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we explored, as I say, a full range of options, and then in terms of the optimum solution in the end, we determined actually that Shawbrook's proposition fitted what we were looking for. So, the fact that they already knew the business and those existing relationships were there has only proved to help, I think, going forward. But it was a case of they still had to come up with the right proposition, which they did.
So looking more general, but obviously linking to what we're talking about with MRN, were there any challenges and areas that we should look out for that are in common for looking for this type of fundraise?
Yeah, I mean, I think the experience with MRN was probably quite peculiar to MRN, and as much as we were fundraising during a pandemic, I think on the whole we managed that whole process pretty seamlessly. Obviously with the benefit of technology. And we were able to have physical meetings, which was important, sort of August, September time. So I think on the whole, the pandemic didn't actually provide too much of a problem for us. I think in a strange sort of way, because MRN is such an exciting business with such a great story to tell, and it was performing so well, we almost had an embarrassment of riches around the funding. And I think that was actually probably one of the biggest challenges, was actually trying to see the wood for the trees and sort of analyse and discuss through an iterative process with Graham and his colleagues what the optimum solution was and what the optimum package of funding was. And that just required a lot of thinking time, putting our brains to work and having lots of collective discussions, which, in the end, I think we came up with a really positive outcome, which delivered what Graham and the team were looking for.
Okay, and Graham, finally turning to you, now you have the investment in place, how's the business performing? Obviously it was performing very well before, but what difference has it made? And can you give us any insight into what's next for the business?
Now that the round is over, MRN is in a really good position as we move into the next phase, really, of the increase in the amount of interest and work in our sector. Driven fundamentally by the pandemic, but also after 15 years of operation of our organisation, there's a long-standing growth pattern in this area, and that the pandemic really created an environment where we probably grew 3 years worth of growth in 1 year, and as a consequence, a whole spectrum of things that need to be developed and improved in the organisation start to become very evident. That is, of course, going to use up a lot of the cash that we've gathered this way, but it also opens up a whole series of new opportunities for the organisation as we move into what is a next stage of maturation of our sector, and that's going to be quite powerful. And I think there are lots of reasons why we'd want to look at our capitalisation yet further over relatively short periods of time as the interest in our sector really does accelerate and boom.
Graham, thank you very much for joining us today. Nick, thanks for joining us here in the studio. Sorry we couldn't be in the Caribbean as well with Graham, unfortunately. But thanks again to you both, and please look out for more behind the transaction videos coming soon from RGCF.